out of the top 7 teams are from the SEC. There was plenty more for us to talk about on this week of the Pigskin Cafe.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast where Hampton, Chase, and Graham break down all things college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They had to win this game.
There's a problem.
This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my gut's telling me.
I genuinely could not believe it.
You don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
What are we doing?
That is a stat there, ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in again. And hey, week 2 of college football. We feel like we've learned some stuff. We've got plenty more statistical data to look at. And I don't know if that means that we know more or we know less. What a week of college football. We found out a lot. But guys, we got a lot to talk about because there's some of just how I'm coming to this podcast feeling like I know less than what I did a week ago. And for other teams, I'm thinking, wow, they really did impress me. So we got plenty to talk about. I got Graham and Hampton here with me. So let's dive straight in. The game that probably kept us up a little bit longer, and I'll just say, my wife Lindsay was asking me, this game started at 6, right? And it was 10 o'clock, and the game was still not quite over yet, which is absolutely insane. I wish we got to do something about that. Let's keep moving. Talking about the Alabama USF game. There is a lot to be said here, fellas, and I think it's good that we had a little bit of a break, a little bit of time to just, unwind, maybe go to church, probably what we needed to do after probably last night, probably need it for our own self, but also before we get on here, make anything permanent or public. So how about this, Graham? If you don't mind, I'll start with you, then I'll move to Hampton, then I'll give kind of my thoughts, and then we'll keep the show moving. So, Graham, when you're watching last night, again, was this a game, I'll tee it up like this, was this a game that you felt like you learned more or that you feel even more confused coming out of this game?
Yeah, I feel more confused. I think that going from week 1 to week 2, Alabama, very explosive week 1, a fairly clean football game against Western Kentucky. Comes week 2, plays South Florida, and it's the first 3 quarters is pretty much just a repeat of what happened last year in Tampa. And the reason I'm so confused was that in that 1 year span, have we made improvements? Have we gotten better? And yet the same things that were, hurting us a year ago against South Florida are hurting us now in week 2. It was mainly the quarterback run, giving up almost 100 yards to Byron Brown for South Florida, which is not the end of the world, but it is concerning considering they kept going back to it and back to it and back to it, and that it was like the converter for it didn't matter, third down and however long, let Byron Brown hold on to it and he can make a play. I think for me, that part was the most confusing in the way that we started the game. Fourth quarter, Alabama played a lot better. I'm not going to dive too deep into the Pritchett versus Formby, kind of conversation. We might get into it. I don't know. But for Alabama, we've got to do better than we did in the first 3 quarters. If you play like this against Wisconsin next week, against Georgia in a few weeks, you're going to be in big trouble because you're going to start behind the chains. You're going to start behind the 8 ball and have a lot of room you have to make up towards the very end. I was impressed by the fourth quarter of Alabama's effort. Just the last few possessions, just very efficient, scoring points, getting in the end zone, which was very encouraging, but I was still concerned, and that's why I'm still more confused after week 2 of Alabama football, and that there's just been 2 dynamics of what has happened. Week 1, very productive. Week 2, very inefficient. Lots of penalties. It's like we went backwards instead of going forwards, and after 2 weeks of college football, that leaves me a little bit more confused. Hampton, I'm going to throw it to you about some confusion or clarity with Alabama. I think the first 3 quarters we can all agree was very concerning and very confusing. But tell me about this fourth quarter effort that Alabama had, and if that actually kind of gives you more clarity than the confusion that was brought the first 3 quarters.
Well, I'll answer your question first about the fourth quarter. it may provide a little more clarity of the fact that Elijah Pritchett probably will be the starting right tackle going forward when Caden Proctor returns to the lineup, hopefully against Wisconsin this Saturday, because there's no doubt that the offensive line was solidified when he came into the game. They ran behind him when he came into the game, and I think in his 6 snaps, Chase, you had that this morning, he scored 3 touchdowns, and that's mighty impressive. And I don't think I personally don't believe that if Pritchett's in there the whole game, that some of the I would say the margin of victory might have been bigger, but I think some of the issues that you saw still would have been there for Alabama. And I think one of the main reasons Pritchett didn't play was because of injury. His ankle was banged up. He didn't practice much during the week, and they were trying to hold him out of this game in hopes of him and Proctor returning next week. And that's the thing with the injury to Proctor and the injury to Pritchett. They moved Booker out to left tackle, so he's playing a new position. Then left guard, they put Geno Vandermark in. He hadn't played all year, and I didn't think he looked too great either.
Where did he come from? Was he a recruit or was he a transfer?
Transfer from Michigan State.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember seeing his name come through, and I think everyone was a little bit more confused of like, I don't even know who this guy is. So not in a bad way. It's just like, hey, I don't remember recruiting him. Is he ready and is not as talented, or is it just like, hey, he's a little bit more raw? So continue. That was just a clarification that I had.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. And I think he did. I don't think he was awful. I don't think he was great by any stretch of the imagination. And while Booker played good at left tackle, I think he's definitely a better guard. And when you have him in there at guard, you have one of the best interior offensive lines in the nation. So the O-line was not gelling. Wilkin Formby, God love him, he did not have a good game. Now, I know a lot of people are saying he's a terrible player today and all this and all that. He's young. He's a young guy in only his second start ever. Need to give him time to develop. He may just simply not be ready because he kind of looked like his head was spinning at times. He very much struggled with speed off the edge, and he got called for a bunch of holding calls. Now, 2 of them, in my humble opinion, were absolutely bogus. There was one where the line or the edge guy fell down. He just got on top of him, which is what you're supposed to do. They called holding on that. Then they called holding on the long touchdown that Jalen had, and that wasn't holding to me. If we're gonna call that holding, then we could call holding almost every play. And I say that as someone who also thought that Alabama benefited from when a holding was called in the third or fourth quarter on Jahad Campbell. Yeah, he pulled his jersey, but again, that kind of stuff is it's not an egregious hold. And to me, if you're calling that, that's ticky-tack, and that speaks to the officiating as a whole that I didn't think was good on either side, honestly. They had over 25 penalties. I didn't tune into a football game to watch the guys in stripes throw 20 flags. I mean, that's just unacceptable. That's not a good product. And that's why the game lasted 4 hours, because it was stop, start. There was never a flow to the game. It was a very weird game, just like last year against South Florida was a very weird game. And Graham, you pointed to that, and I think that was a great observation by you. This game mirrored last year a ton. Now, before I get to probably what everybody else wants to talk about, I'm going to talk about the defense real quick. I think overall they played well. Overall, save maybe 3 or 4 drives where they had some lapses, especially like you said, Byron Brown, that quarterback. They had difficulty stopping him in the run game. Like, he was very effective. He's put on some weight. He's not an easy guy to tackle. And with that scheme, when you got the wide splits, that Tennessee-type offense, and a quarterback that can run like that, they're difficult to defend. And consistently, that defense got put in bad position after bad position all night long because the offense didn't help them out any. And I thought at times they bowed up and they'd hold them to 3. But there are definitely some things on that side of the ball that can get cleaned up. They got beat over top 2 or 3 times. If the quarterback's accurate with the ball, there's a touchdown or 2 that South Florida should have, could have, would have scored. And that's got to get cleaned up. But again, it's game 2. And the two guys that got beat deep were freshmen, Xavier Brown and Red Morgan. And speaking of freshmen, I want to give a shout out to Jalen Mbakwe and Ryan Williams, who, in my opinion, made the two biggest plays of the game. Jalen Mbakwe's punt return sparked the Alabama offense. Got really good field position. They go down, they score in a few plays, and then Ryan Williams does what he does, man. He's already, in my opinion, wide receiver 1 on this team. And I cannot believe that after 2 weeks. But he is clearly the go-to guy. He clearly is drawing the most attention from the defense. They were doubling him consistently, and they were also grabbing on him consistently. But, I mean, that touchdown play was so great. And the little nuance that I don't know if our audience caught or not, he caught a similar ball in the third quarter, and he spun outside. And the guy made the tackle on him. This time, knowing that he spun outside the first time, he spun inside, and the defender was expecting him to go outside. Because of that, he was able to put on the jets, accelerate, and get a huge touchdown and completely change the game. And at that point, Alabama had it under control. And that's what I give credit to, is that even though it was ugly, at the end, the team came together, they found a way to win, and they made it look a lot better than what actually occurred on the field. I mean, 15 years from now, if you're looking at this box score, you're going to think, oh, Alabama took care of business. But for those of us who had the misfortune of watching it, that was not the case. So those are my points on the team as a whole. But now we got to talk about the quarterback. And let me take a swig of water before I get into this.
And I'll just chime in as you're doing that. I kept making the joke today at church. People were like, oh, so Alabama, I was just watching, I was watching the score down at the bottom. And I was like, yeah, score wasn't close. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it really didn't. That is the textbook definition of, like, the stat books don't tell the whole story.
Yep.
Because, I mean, that game is not represented by its end score at all. I'm trying to recall a game that is more like that. And it's not, I think the reason we're saying that and really like meaning it is because last year it felt like it was the exact same game as last year, except the score was what, 14-3, 17-3?
17-3.
Which is still,
with a late touchdown to ice it.
Yeah. And it's like, that's still a pretty close ball game. And this year it's like, oh wow, what are 40-17 or 13? That feels like that game was in the bag for a long time. It's like, no, it really wasn't until probably the last 6 minutes of the game that we got there. So just kind of adding some flavor, because that felt very unusual. But and I don't think this is something that is going to be typical, but it does seem like USF has our number. There's something they're doing that if I'm Wisconsin this week, I'm looking at everything that gave them problems outside of maybe some things that they can change between now and next week, because there's something about when they put those wide receivers out wide that Alabama, they just look kind of uncomfortable. They look like this is not how you're supposed to play us. So I'm just kind of adding some colors. You grab some water, but I totally agree with you here.
No, and that's great. I loved everything you said, and I agreed with all of it. And I think to kind of segue from that comment to the overall point about the quarterback and the discussion that I think we need to have is, yeah, the defense did struggle at times, but part of that is because, again, they were consistently put in terrible positions, gave USF short fields. The offense kept going 3 and out. And against an offense like that runs a lot of plays and runs a lot of tempo, you're going to wear down a little bit. And when Alabama's offense isn't putting up points, USF starts to believe a little bit, man. And when you get belief with, they got talent. I mean, they've got talent and they've got a scheme that causes any defensive coordinator fits. So you combine all that together, it's not a good recipe. And you could tell even the fourth quarter that the defenders for Alabama were exhausted and they had to rotate a ton of guys. I mean, there were times they had to sub in a whole new front seven because of how long they were being on the field and how, reduced the length of time from an offensive possession to the next defensive possession was because of the amount of 3 and outs that we were having. And speaking of 3 and outs, we need to have the conversation about Jalen Milroe. And I want this to be nuanced. And if I get going and I say something that you want me to expound upon more or that you disagree with, I want to have a good nuanced conversation because I am sick and tired of the discourse over this. Okay? And let me get this out of the way first. Jalen Milroe last night was not the number one problem on offense for Alabama. Okay? We can get that out of the way. He was not the number one problem, and he was also not the only problem. Okay? The offensive line was not good enough. We can all say that. All right? Everybody agree?
I'm with you.
You're with me. With me. All right. But all I heard leading up to this game from Bama Twitter and the BOL board and all this stuff, this is Jalen Milroe revenge game because he didn't play last year and he's going to go crazy on them boys because he got benched in that game last year and he's going to show them what it would have looked like last year if he had played. I can tell you how it would have looked last year if he would have played, just like it did last night. Just like it did last night. And this is why I'm concerned going forward. Michigan laid out the blueprint for how to affect and how to stymie Jalen Milroe. It's just true. Because what USF did and what Michigan did was they would show something at the snap, pre-snap, while he's making his reads. Then they change right after he snaps the ball and muddy the picture on him. And it confuses him. His processing is not where it needs to be. Identifying when a blitz is coming and where it's coming is a problem for him. Identifying where his hot is a problem for him. And when you have that and you're a fourth-year quarterback, you're going to have drives there are many 3 and outs because what it requires when you're unable to do that is that everything on first and second down has to go perfect. You have to be in second and manageable, third and manageable. And I hate to tell everyone, but that's not football. I know that's not a recipe for success down in and down out, but perfect ideal conditions are not football. You have to be able to thrive in situations that are full of adversity. It's just true. And what South Florida did, they kept bringing 5, they kept bringing 6, and Jalen Milroe did not make them pay for it by hitting quick, short passes, getting the ball out of his hands quick, hitting guys in the intermediate area of the field. And then on top of that, when he did hit, one up the seam to Jeremy Bernard. If he hits them in stride, it might be a touchdown. Instead, he has to go down and almost slide for the ball to catch it. He's consistently late with the ball, even on ones he completes. He doesn't anticipate guys getting open. He has to fully see them open, which leads to a lack of yak after the catch by many of our guys, and sometimes just a lack of a pass in general. And we heard all offseason about how dramatically better he would look in Kalen DeBoer's offense. And guys, I think it's unfair to say that he has not improved at all. I think he shows glimpses of improving, like the touchdown to Kobe Prentice. He steps up in the pocket and he runs and he throws a pass, keeps his eyes downfield, it ends in a touchdown. The problem is that is not consistent enough. And at this juncture in your career, I don't want to hear the excuses of, well, he doesn't have the experience. He has started 15, 17 games at this point. We've got to start building. We've got to start getting more consistent. And this is the last thing I'll say too. It's always someone else's fault other than Jalen Milroe's. That's what I see on Twitter. Everything is the O-line. It's the receivers not getting open. It's the OC not calling plays. Oh, why do they have him under center? That's the reason he fumbled the ball. Execute the dadgum play. Michael Penix was under center plenty last year. And go back and watch that Washington offense. This crap that we're watching right now looks very similar to the Tommy Rees offense that Alabama ran last year and looks very similar to the one Bill O'Brien ran against Texas A&M in 2022. What's the common denominator? Number 4 in the pocket. All right? So this is what I'll say. I think that by no means did he have his best game at all last night. I thought along with the stuff I mentioned, he forced the ball downfield to Ryan Williams a couple times when he was in double coverage, when he had guys streaking across the middle part of the field that he could have hit and kept the drive going. Instead, he wasted it on a bomb that had no chance of getting completed. But going forward, if this does not improve, Alabama is going to be in the same situation that they were last year, but it's going to be worse because the book is out on how to defend him. And that's blitzing him, that's making him think instead of letting him just react. When he just reacts and plays ball, he's pretty good to excellent at times. When he has to think about it, when he has to process, especially quickly, it's not good for Alabama. And my buddy Thomas had a good point that I'll give him, and then we'll turn it over to y'all to kind of get your reaction, see if you agree or disagree. When Alabama's playing well, Jalen Milroe can play well. When Alabama's not playing well, he is not capable of elevating the level of play from the guys around him. Because last night, and I get a couple touchdowns got called back, but last night I saw a guy that, to me, instead of encouraging guys and kind of getting that fire going, it just was like, he was looking around like, it's everybody's fault but mine. And Wisconsin's going to have a game plan for him, but I'm telling you right now, if this doesn't get fixed, if this doesn't improve, Georgia in 2 or 3 weeks is going to be bad because they're going to be able to expose it more so than South Florida. And I even mentioned it against Western Kentucky. You saw signs of it. But I'm concerned because everything looks so difficult on offense, and I think a lot of it has to do with the quarterback. Not all, but a lot. And I'll turn it over to y'all. I need water after that.
I submit that to evidence. Man, I'm with you. I think y'all know probably even more clearly how I feel about this. I didn't go into this game thinking that this showed me something that I hadn't kind of already been feeling.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I want to just maybe put in front of you guys. If you've listened to some of Kalen DeBoer's when he's talking about this offseason, coming into this season, there's this line they kept using, and this is coach speak for something else. What he kept saying was with Jalen, we just got to go out there and kind of let the guy play, just go have fun. Almost is what he's saying. Is just go play ball. I think that's literally the quote unquote. Hey, we just go play ball. What that really means to me, if you're asking another coach the same question with a quarterback who can pass the ball effectively, they say, hey, what have we worked on? Hey, we've been working on going through our progressions and then making the smart play. Do you feel the two difference? There's a difference between, hey, just go out there and play your game, go out there and play ball, or hey, go through your reads. He's saying something in between those, he's saying something by the way he's wording it.
If you read between the lines,
yeah, they're saying that the more effective strategy is to let this guy go out there and have to make little to no decisions because he's more effective that way than trying to teach him how to be an effective quarterback. And I'm talking specifically in the mid-range game. So this is where I just kind of want to go for a second. Is here's just my honest take. There's clear limitations. And if you were to ask me the question, hey, are things more confusing or less confusing? They're almost less confusing to me because I'm with you, Hampton, in the way that you said. I can say that he's gotten – I can't say he hasn't gotten any better. I think he's gotten better. I think some of the play calls, there was this – you almost tell there was a conversation, hey, man, you need to run the ball more. We are going to call plays that you are going to run the football.
You have no choice.
Your strength is not sitting back and passing the ball. You just got to know that your God-given talent has led you to have strengths in other areas. And we'd love to help you with your weaknesses. But you're going to be able to, you got to build on your strengths first. So I'm grateful they've had that conversation. I see it at times, and it seems like it works. I'd say a good 50% of the time it works really well. But there's clear limitations. What I was discouraged by yesterday was these deep balls that felt just like, hey, we're just handing the ball off and not getting anything because they know we're trying to run. And then we're just going to throw a deep ball just to see if we can kind of hit the lottery.
It was desperation. It felt desperate.
You're talking about game flow. There was no flow because it was 3 and out. But it really was just these deep balls that felt like that guy's not open. You're just going to hit the lottery. He's not open. And so I'd love for us to clean those up. But here's the problem is that if you take away that, all you're working with is some short range throws. Because we've seen that his limitation is the middle range, reading a guy, throwing a guy open is not something that he's able to do. And I think last year we were saying, hey, it's not something he's able to do yet. I've just not seen it. It's been absent, and at this point, it's one of those things that he's not able to do until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
The word that as I was watching, and I don't want to go too hard, but at the same time, it's just this is kind of where we're at, and we've got to know this going into this season. Like, hey, let's just have an honest moment of where we feel like we're at. It might feel like we're overreacting, but I'm just telling you what I saw yesterday. It's not like an overreaction. I'm just telling you when I cut on the game. The one word that kept coming to my mind was panicked. Everything felt panicked. And I don't know many quarterbacks that play better in that kind of zone, but he's playing panicked. And here's what it is that he just has too many skills as a playmaker. He's got too many God-given abilities and talents and skills as a playmaker to go make plays happen, to struggle in the big moments. Like the moments that's like, hey, this guy has all that you could ask for. Got all the skills, all the talents that you could ever ask for. Instead of rising to the moments or rising above the circumstances, I continue to see us leave plays on the field. And what I was looking for, this is where I'll end with, what I was looking for yesterday was for someone in that captain room, somewhere on the coach, to somebody just like, it didn't feel like this bothered them enough. It felt like if you saw last year, it's like, hey guys, we kind of struggle with this team and they kind of have our number and, we can't really block anybody. It's like, this didn't bother them enough of, hey guys, at the end of the day, if no one else wants it, I'm about to go and make a play. And I think maybe you saw it out of Hollywood, but I think he was just open. He caught what was thrown to him. But I didn't see that from the team where they're just huddled like, guys, let's stop. I saw Justice Haynes. They were talking about that. He kind of had something to say on the sideline. But guys, if your freshmen are the ones who are having to lead this conversation, this team's not going far. Like, and that's just, I've never seen a freshman-led team go and accomplish in year one that they won't accomplish in year three. And those guys are the ones who are actually leading the team. I need to see more leadership. Again, if that's in the void of, hey, I'm not able to perform in this specific aspect of the game, but I'm going to lead us through it. I'm going to find plays. I'm going to find moments to stick my head down, go the extra yard, and I just didn't see it. But we'll move to the Auburn game.
Yeah, I want to say something. Then I'm going to get Graham's thoughts, and then as soon as that, we can go to Auburn. But I think he really hit the nail on the head. And a point to Hollywood, no moment's ever too big for that kid. Like, it's his second game. Like, he's born for that type of stuff. And he's not. He's the most composed guy out there. 100%. No, I totally agree with that. And I think it is not an overreaction to say, I think it's an overreaction if you're like, Alabama's going to lose 6 games this year. That's an overreaction. What is not, though, is to say, I think that the same problems we had last year, we're going to have this year because we have 15 to 17 games of evidence of it being so. And what is the best predictor of the future? The past, in a lot of circumstances. And that is what concerns me. I have seen this movie before. I've seen how it ends, and I'm not happy with the ending. Graham?
Nothing further. I agree with everything y'all said. Nothing further.
Man. It's just, and again, what's hilarious about this is we're borderline, like I'm about to blow a fuse, over here.
I know.
We won 42-13. That's what's just hilarious about all this.
Saving in us, baby. We've been programmed.
Yeah.
We've been programmed.
And what, when we freaked out last year, Hampton, I remember you saying, hey, I just don't know if this guy's just one of those guys that just, man, he thrives in adversity. But I liked how they said, man, we played a lot of games last year that we just did not play well. And one thing that this team was able to do, whether it was playing close against Georgia, playing close against Auburn, to then going and beating Georgia, like that it doesn't compute, and that's college football, and that's why we love it. So I think we have some very real, like, hey, I I don't know what to say other than what my eyes are seeing, and it's making me. It feels like no one else is really on the team. This is frustrating them wanting to find solutions. So I almost feel like I'm having to step into that void. But it was one of those games, man. It was just one of those games that you kind of felt like they were going to win it in the end, but you also knew, hey, how you ruin one of those unranked at home, winning streaks that we have since the first year like Saban got here, was a game like that where you fool around with the team you're not supposed to fool around with, and all of a sudden they score a touchdown and then they got the field goal late. All of a sudden, that's how things get torn down. I mean, if you want to look at Notre Dame, that's exactly what happened there, is they let a team hang around too long. So